My name is Jessy and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm bringing you a very different episode of Difficult Conversations because I'm joined by my adult child, Mary-Ann. Mary-Ann, do you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, hi everybody, my name is Mary-Ann. I'm from the Philippines and I am Jessy's cousin. I will be studying global marketing at Roehampton University, so I'm very excited. I'm 26 years old and I'm currently living with my cousin.
Okay, so I wanted to bring Mary-Ann here for an episode of Difficult Conversations because growing up we've always had a very close relationship, and when we moved here to the UK I was completely Tagalog speaking. So is Mary-Ann. You know, I consider it still my native language, but our upbringing meant that we had to learn English in very different ways, and I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to explore how her experience with learning English was compared to mine, and I'm calling this a difficult conversation because Mary-Ann and I experienced some hardships in the different ways that we had to learn English, and I really wanted to explore that with everybody today. How do we start? Well, really, I want to ask you, when did you start learning to speak English?
Yeah, we were first taught how to speak in English in school, right? So, but I actually learned more of the English language when I started working. So after I graduated in college, I worked as a call center representative. So we work for a US company. So that's when I, finally get to know more about the English language. To be honest, right now I'm still in the process of, getting used to the language because I still have a lot to learn in terms of vocabulary and grammar, I think.
So you because I know her, I know that there's certain things she's not been fully truthful about. I know that you learn English in school, and you say school, but remember that, I say remember, but we have an audience from people all over the world, and so school means different ages for people. When you say you were first introduced to English in school where you were learning, what age at school did you start learning English?
I think I was around 8 or 9 years old.
So I moved to the UK from the Philippines when I was 6 turning 7. So I celebrated my 7th birthday here in the UK. And I know that we used to go back to the Philippines to visit our family. So Mary-Ann and her family, we would visit every other year, something along those lines. I remember learning English for me was incredibly painful, and I don't know how many people who watch these videos can relate to that kind of struggle to learn English and feel like you had to learn, otherwise there was no other form of communication. So at the time, as a kid, not being able to speak any other language aside from Tagalog, not being able to speak in my mother tongue was incredibly alienating for me, because I went from being able to speak to my family members to suddenly not being able to communicate, and actually almost being afraid to communicate in any way. The reason I bring up my past, aside from because I wanted to bring in another side to learning English, is because as we started to learn English more and more, myself and my sisters were taught to speak primary English, and so Tagalog kind of fell by the wayside, and it meant that whenever we came back to the Philippines, I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, but I remember our aunties, so your mum or our other aunties, encouraging you as our cousins to speak in English. So I wonder, were you taught to speak some basic English whilst, as a preparation for us to come? Do you remember any of that?
No, I think all of the things that we say back then are just the basic English that we know at that time. So it's as I remembered it, it's very hard to communicate with you guys that time. So instead of us speaking to you in English, it's the other way around. You have to speak in Tagalog instead.
Yes, I remember that aspect, and it was good for us to get practice for Tagalog. But I always have an appreciation for my cousins and my family in the Philippines, because even though we were visiting them, they were trying incredibly hard to learn our language too. So going into school, what was English like? So I never learned English abroad. So when I was in school in the Philippines, I never had English lessons. I remember having Mandarin lessons for some reason. So tell me, was it an optional class that you could take, or was it a class you had to take?
Yeah, it's one of the classes that we had to take. And I remembered when I was in grade school, you know, I enjoyed English very much, that I became one of the top students for that subject. But I think that's because we're always thought of the formal way to speak English, right? So now that I've grown up, I realized that we also have to learn the casual way, right? Because there was a time when you were like joking, and then I don't know how to respond at all, because you know, that's because we were taught of the formal ways, like how to write a letter and things like that. But I think it's also important for us to learn how, you know, the slangs.
But I thought that you were going to tell the story of the other day. Can I do it?
Yes, go ahead.
Very much like what Metan said, and I'm only laughing because of how it happened. I'm not laughing because Metan's husband, Ivan, his English is amazing. Can I just say, first of all, your English is amazing.
Yeah, he speaks better English than me.
And I want to share with you a conversation we had where Ivan, he has the kindest heart, and I wasn't feeling too great about myself, and he said, well, no, you're grooming this person to become a better person. And I kind of laughed because grooming, I guess in America perhaps, and still in the Philippines, grooming is a really positive word. But as words change and as words develop over time, in the UK, grooming is seen as a negative word now. And I know it's people that give power to words, but let's just face it, if you're from the UK and I say the word, I'm grooming you, doesn't sit right, does it? But we laughed at Ivan saying it because obviously he meant it in a good way, but it was there that we had to explain to him, yes, factually you are correct in the way you've used that word. However, conversationally, it's not quite right, or at least it's not quite right in the UK anymore. So talking further into your learning English, and you said you really enjoyed it, what kinds of things were you being taught in the Philippines about English? So were you being taught how to say things, or like were you reading books? Were you being tested? Like English here in the UK is about literature and reading and books. But what was it like in the Philippines? Was it just more about the language?
Yeah, it's more about the language, the meaning of words or how to use it in a sentence. We're also taught how to read and how to write in English. But I think most of the knowledge that I have in English were learned during my professional days. I mean, during my work days, but not in school.
Okay. And sorry, I know you said that it's learned more when you're actually in practice, and actually I think a lot of us can relate when learning anything really, is that we learn far more outside of the classroom than we do inside the classroom. No hate to education, by the way, stay in school. But I want to know, how about in university? You actually in a conversation briefly said that a lot of your your classes was very much Tagalog speaking, Filipino. Were there ever any moments when you had to adjust your learning for an English side or American English? Like, did you ever have any English classes?
In university?
Yeah.
Yes, we do have English classes in university. Even when studying broadcasting, most of our subjects were taught in English. But just because we have, a Filipino professor, whenever we want to ask him questions in Tagalog, he will then, respond to us in Tagalog. So really, it's English is not practiced very much during the college or university days.
Okay, that's interesting to see, because I think even, and I don't know if it's more of a cultural difference thing, but at university we never really had an English speaking class or anything about learning how to speak English or even English language generally. But then I have to remind you all that we studied very similar courses, and you did, what course did you do?
Mass communication,
and I
major in broadcasting. And then you did journalism.
Journalism and media, which is basically the English equivalent. It'd be interesting to see how you experience university now and what kind of support they provide for international students in terms of learning English, because to be able to get into Marianne's course, she had to pass an IELTS. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what it kind of meant?
Yeah, so IELTS is an English testing exam. So the university will require a certain amount of grade that you have to pass in order to be enrolled to the university. So when I started to, when we plan to take the exam, a lot of people are telling me not to get to a review center because they said that I'm already working for a US company, so I'm already good in speaking in English. But I'm glad we did, because there's it's not about speaking and writing in English. There's a lot of technicalities that comes with it. So I'm glad that we really reviewed first before we get into the exam.
And she passed with flying colors. You actually exceeded all the requirements that you needed, so I'm so proud, and I'm glad you did it, because I think one of the reasons I asked you to do it anyway, and even Ivan, he wasn't required to do it, but I asked him to do it because it was just more for peace of mind. I already knew that they were good at English, and their English was going to be more than enough to be able to succeed in your course and to be able to work in this country. If I may say this, but I'm scared that if I say this, you're going to suddenly freak out. Your English is absolutely fine, okay? But I've noticed you're struggling more sat in front of a camera than when we're at dinner and we're talking. It's you, me, Evan and Scott, and we're talking in English, and you're absolutely fine. There's no hesitation in your voice whatsoever.
You know, I think it's a Filipino thing. Like, in the Philippines, there's a lot of people who judge you because of your grammar.
Really?
Yeah, that's why even when I'm, like what you said, when just conversing casually, I'm fine with speaking in English, but now I'm in front of the camera and I know that a lot of people will be watching this. I'm actually conscious about my grammar and my accent. So because in the Philippines they're very perfectionist when it comes to the English language.
I think a lot of people who are watching this who are from the UK can agree with me when we say that we are such a diverse country with so many accents. Even the ones who were born and raised in the UK have their own accents, that we just enjoy being able to converse with anybody, that your accent and the way you say things almost doesn't matter. As long as you're comfortable in it.
And as long as you can understand what I'm saying.
Yes. I understand the nerves, and I appreciate that you just want to be perfect for yourself. However, I want to assure you that the people are so embracing here, and I always just enjoy. I wish that I could learn more languages, but I always enjoy it when someone who doesn't speak, who isn't a native English speaker is speaking English, because it just shows your level of intelligence that you can comprehend another language, let alone your own. I want to share with you a little bit of something. So basically, one of the biggest things that I experienced was when I was learning how to speak English, my accent was really off. My accent was very much Filipino, and so it meant that when I was trying to speak English, it sounded like a foreigner speaking English, which I guess at the time it was. And so I have this fear for her that she's going to experience the same thing, or that she's going to be worried and overthink things as well. Do you have any worries right now about speaking English, anything like that?
Yeah, like what you said, I don't care much about the accent because I think I will adapt that eventually. But my concern is more of the terms or the words that I will use, just like what happened with Ivan. I'm concerned that some words that I might say may be rude to some people, or I'm afraid that I will be misunderstood. I'm trying to get used to the language by watching a lot of movies memories by talking to you in English.
But when you just said about TV shows and you're watching movies and things like that, that's actually how I learned how to speak English. For people who don't know, I was very much against learning English when I came to the country. So much so that I basically became mute. Long story short is that through much trial and error we discovered that actually I did know how to speak English. I was just refusing to speak English as a stubborn young kid, I guess. And so I don't know, I'd like to think that as we progress and as we learn to understand, and as more people migrate to different countries, there becomes an understanding that kids just need a little bit more nurturing and given a little bit more confidence to be able to speak different languages. I wonder, or is it too soon to ask, do you plan to raise your kids? They don't have kids yet, but when you have kids, do you plan to raise them bilingual, so multilingual?
Yes, I think it's good that they learn English at the same time, because it would be very beneficial for their future career, right? But I also want them to learn Tagalog just so they can converse or communicate with their grandparents, their cousins, and relatives in the Philippines.
Yes, actually that's a fear I've had as well, is because my English isn't my Tagalog isn't perfect, and my partner is English, so his Tagalog is worse than mine. I worry that I won't be able to give my children the ability, and I don't have children yet. I don't want them to not be able to speak Tagalog, because I want them to speak to their cousins too. And so I think, you know what, I'm thinking about the future, and I believe that in the future everybody will be able to speak at least 2 languages. Moving forwards, how do you feel like learning English at a younger age allowed you to feel more confident about speaking English in your work life?
Yeah, so at a young age, we were taught how to speak in English, but I didn't really know that language really well until I worked. As they say, experience is the best teacher, right? So I think I really got to know more about the language when I started speaking with Americans as our clients. So, but even though in our job, we have this like prepared speeches, right?
Yes.
But even though there's still a time that they will ask you some questions you didn't expect, so that really helped me practice the language and get to know more about the terms that Americans usually use. Just like as simple as the question, how are you? Back in the days, we were always taught that you just respond with I'm fine, thank you. But Americans have different ways, or even British people, they have different ways on how to respond to that question. So
I worked in a call center too before, but what is the silliest thing you've had in response to you? Do you want me to start? How are you? I'm fine, thank you, but I'm actually on the toilet. Do you mind? My response was no, and I got a sale from it. How about you?
I remembered when I was so nervous when I started taking in calls, and then the first call that I got, the man is very angry, and then he said, I want to speak to someone from the United States of America. Because he immediately, noticed that I'm a Filipina.
Do you know what though, when I call like a customer services line and I've clearly been passed on to a call center, if I recognize they're Filipina, I get Filipino, I always get really excited. I'm always like, can you just stay to chat for a little bit? Does that just show how lonely I am? Well, sorry. I do agree with you, and I really love what you just said about, experience is the greatest teacher, and I think that is so true, because you can learn as much as you can through audiobooks or teachers or even watching TV. Do you have any tips for anybody who is wanting to learn how to speak English?
Yes, so I think the best tip that I can give is to fake it till you make it.
I love that.
What I'm trying to say is that you have to actually speak the language. Even if when me and Ivan is at home, we will practice to speak in English, just so we can be more confident to speak it. And another tip is to start watching a lot of English movies or series. And
Not
then-
American, unless you're trying to learn American English. And I kind of want to steal what you just said about fake it till you make it. I know that a lot of people feel negativity towards that. However, I feel so much positivity towards it because sometimes you do have to fake it. Otherwise, you're going to let your nerves and your fears get in the way. If I can share and impart any wisdom when it comes to learning English, it's just to just do it. Marianne, I'm surprised you didn't mention this, but when you were practicing for your IELTS, you were watching YouTubers,
Yes.
a YouTube video. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I started watching Papa Teach Me. Shout out to Papa Teach Me. So he's a British YouTuber who's actually explaining us things about or the difference between the American and British English. So he's not only teaching us the words, but the different ways to use it, and then the pronunciation
Yes.
as well.
Well, I really liked, because I was a bit skeptical when she told me she was learning from someone called Papa Teach Me. Again, shout out to Papa Teach Me. He's not watching this video. I'm just telling you this now. But I was skeptical because of his name. However, when she showed me a video of his, I was actually really impressed, because I'm not an English teacher and I would never be able to teach someone how to speak English. But the way that Papa Teach Me teaches, it's like he doesn't just teach you the right words, he also teaches you why certain words are the wrong words. So I think, before, even if you have no confidence to speak English, just use your basics and start forming words and sentences from that, and slowly the more confident you become in the words that you're using, and the more you talk, the more you'll understand how certain words are said or the correct ways to say things. And so I think really, yes, fake it until you make it, because hopefully, and this is what I want to reassure you, is that there are people in this country who are from all over the world, and they will appreciate just the fact that you're trying to learn. And so hopefully they will guide you and teach you how to say things. But you're already in such a good place already. You just need to get more confidence, I think. So my next question really is for any international students or prospective international students watching this and wanting to know, how have you prepared and felt more confident enough to be able to study in an English university, being foreign yourself?
So my advice is don't let your fear stop you from trying, because from my experience, the professors and the students from the university where I'm planning to study has been very supportive, and that's one thing I love the most about UK. It's a very diverse country, so there's a lot of international students. So don't be afraid, because you're not the only one who's a newbie here. So I actually met a friend from the same course, and she's from South Africa. She speaks better English than me, but I could say that she's very supportive. A lot of students are, so don't be afraid, because you'll get a lot of help from the university. And just continue practicing at home. Just look at the mirror and try to speak, with yourself until you became more confident.
That mirror thing, I laughed about it. However, that is a confidence boosting technique apparently, when you speak to yourself and wish yourself good morning in front of the mirror. So why not? And so I wanted to share one last piece of little nugget to go with what you said, and I love that, because I love that you realize that, and you've only been in our home for the last almost 2 weeks now. But you're right, the UK is such a diverse country, and there are people from all over the world in this one small country, that it's hard not to be so embracing of diversity and also of the different ways that language is spoken. English is such a transformed language, I believe, even though it's such an old language. People have their own ways of using it and their own words, and so I don't think ever in your lifetime you will ever really know the full English language. Neither will I. Neither will someone who was born and raised in England, because it's always evolving. And so if I may drop in a little nugget that I shared with you guys earlier this week, is it's never too late to start. If you have a language, it doesn't have to be about English. Pretend that we were talking about the language you want to learn, and just every time we said English, just change it to beep, another language. No matter what it is, no matter what age you are, no matter where you are, you have the ability, especially if you have access to the internet, to learn any language you have. But in terms of, really immersing yourself in that culture and that language by watching TV shows, listening to online tutorials, or even making friends with someone from another country safely, you can do all those things. And I don't think you should limit yourself just because you've spoken however many years just this one language that you know. I think the world is so much more rich every time someone learns a new language. So I hope that you will be inspired to learn a new language. Maybe someday we can learn a new language together. So I'm excited. Thank you so much for joining me here.
You're welcome.
I have to admit that she was forced onto doing this because I wanted so badly to introduce you to my baby, who's not a baby.
Yeah, I told her I wanted to do this once I'm improved, but that's the point of having this interview, right? Is to get the real feel or the fear of speaking English.
Yeah, and it's a difficult conversation. It was difficult for you.
Yes.
It was, but I not only wanted to introduce you to the world, but I also wanted to share some insights that you had being completely new to the country, and now finally for the first time having to put what you've been learning into practice in a physical sense. Wish her plenty of luck because she starts university at Roehampton University next week when she finally gets out of quarantine. Man, do you have anything you want to say to your future friends?
Yes. I'll see you again. I really wanted to improve my language because there's a lot of things that I want to share, but I don't think I know the exact words or the right ways on how to say it now. So I'll meet you guys again once I'm improved.
She's great. She's great now, but thank you so much for having this difficult conversation with us, and we can't wait to see you. I hope that you were inspired and at least enjoyed this video with us talking about how we individually learn how to speak English, and also that you've joined this starting journey for Mary Ann in her education, but also in her learning to speak and embrace the English language. I think that it's going to be the first time I ever share something at real time with you, and so I'm really excited to be able to do that, and I'm so thankful that I had you to be able to talk to about this. I hope that you guys have learned something, or at least you enjoyed hearing from us. As I always say, I hope that you have a wonderful day. Please stay good to yourself, and we'll see you later. Bye!